Welcome to the Female Finance Collective, where we encourage women to have open and honest conversations about all things money. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about year-end financial checkups. What are some things that we can do as we get to the end of the year to really check in on our finances, see how we feel about how everything went, and then start thinking forward into 2025. So, Sybil, what I want to know is what is something that you would really recommend people do on this like year-end financial checkup?
Yeah, thank you. This is perfect timing to be talking about this because we're kind of starting to think ahead, right, in the month of December here, and it's a great time to start reflecting. So right now, I am currently in the midst of this exact thing on trying to get my finances where I feel like I understand what's coming in, what's going out, and get it kind of cleaned up for 2025. And so I use Monarch Money now that Mint went away as my kind of budgeting and capturing it all place for my money. And so what I am doing is I'm reflecting on my spending over the last few months mostly. And the reason I'm kind of sticking there, although it's scary because I've had some big expenses the last few months that aren't typical, it's good to see and look at months like that to know that there's also times I need to budget for that are more expensive, right? Like the holiday spendings is up right now. Of course, I was planning for that and working on reducing my spending. Not, I shouldn't say of course, but I was intentionally this year really working on reducing my spending in November so I could spend more in December. But it's also like, it's just a good refresher and place to reframe my mind of like, okay, as I'm thinking ahead to budgeting next year, I really need to look at how expensive these last couple of months have been. That way I can kind of pace it over the next year, right? And so I would really say like the first part of your financial checkup is really just to reflect, look at your numbers, do some reflecting. It's scary. I'll look at them and then I'll like close them and then I'll go away from it. But that way it can kind of settle in, right? Like, yes, it's been expensive, and next year in December it might be expensive too. So, what does that mean? Does that mean I want to, budget a little bit more to holiday spending across the year? We also had some work done on our house that the insurance mostly covered from a hailstorm, but then like it didn't cover repainting the front door. And it was like, okay, we're not going to repaint the whole house and not the front door. That just doesn't make sense. There were a couple of windows that weren't going to be included. It's like, do we add those windows, right? So these are the kinds of expenses that we tend to forget about. And so looking at them and reflecting on them and realizing it might not be painting the front door next year, I hope not. But it might be a car or something that I need to put more money to, right? And so I would say really starting there. And the other part of before I pass the baton, I would say is your emergency savings. So our emergency savings has dwindled a bit the last few months. And so I also am reflecting on that and thinking, okay, I want to make that a priority to start building that back up again, because we've had to use some of it recently. So yeah, just that reflection and seeing where you are right now and kind of sitting with it and being okay with it. And I'm trying to be gentle and kind to myself, right? I'm doing the best I can. And if I didn't look at it, I wouldn't be able to move forward as well as I'm going to be kind of having that hard conversation with myself, as we often say here on the Female Finance Collective. Jen, you're coming to mind when I say those words to myself.
I start with reflection as well. So the things I think about are, what went well over the past year and what areas do I feel like I could improve in. So, I'll sit down. I will also look at the numbers and kind of approach it from that standpoint. So no judgment. It is what it is, but just kind of thinking through, what went well and areas I could improve. I do combine it with looking at my numbers. So similar to Sybil, I take a look at where my money went. I take a look at where I stand in terms of debt. So just, what do I have? What are the interest rates? Is there anything that I feel uncomfortable with? And really assess like how I'm feeling and any worries that come up for me as I look at those numbers. I also look at my savings rate. So I like to see what I've saved as a total for the year in terms of like longer term saving and retirement savings, and just what percentage that is. I really kind of geek out on that number, and I find it helpful for motivation to know. And then what I do is I try to think ahead to the next year and reflecting on the things that went well or may have not gone as well, what I'd like to improve, and start brainstorming for goals. And that's one thing, like it really does take a little bit of brainstorming to figure out what your financial goals are. They may not come to your mind immediately. So it's just taking some time and, thinking about it, and coming up with a kind of a strategy for the year ahead.
I love how you said how you feel, because that is when I think of reflection, that's like the number one thing. Sybil said reflection and she's like, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like reflecting and I'm like, how do I feel about our money? How do I feel about how much we've been saving? How do I feel about how much we're making? And so that feeling piece is big for me. So some of us, right, and this is just how all of our personalities work and how our brains work, is some of us are reflecting with like actual numbers and data and statements and all of that, and some of us are reflecting on like, how do I feel about my finances? And then some of us are going to be somewhere in the middle, right, looking at the numbers and also thinking about how they make us feel, what things we want to change. I think the biggest thing for me, and you two covered, I mean, pretty much everything that I also will be doing and have started doing this year, is just thinking like, is there anything that's like in the back of my mind where I like wish was different, right? And we have some things that I wish was different that we can't like change immediately, but they're going to be, those are the things that I'm going to use from this kind of checkup, and like Mary Lee said, kind of start putting those over on my list of things that might be good goals for 2025, right? Like this thing has been in the back of my mind. I got to figure out how to fix that thing because it's kind of nagging at me. And then, so let's put that on the goals for next year. And I think that's a big one for us. I just popped into my husband's office. We both work from home the other day. And I was like, hey, next year we should change the automatic contribution to our thing, this one thing that we've been working on, and we haven't been putting any money into it for a minute. And he was like, oh yeah, we should do that. And who knows why I felt compelled to just run into his office at that moment and tell him, but like it came into my mind and I was like, this is a change I really feel obviously strongly about. So I just ran and told him. But if those types of things during the reflection pop up, tell your partner or write it down somewhere and like use that when you start to set the goals for next year. And I think part of this reflection for a lot of people is that they don't spend time every week or every month really looking at their finances. So what I'm also thinking about in this checkup is like, do you have specific tasks that you're looking at on a regular basis? Do you have like specific financial tasks that you're doing regularly? Do you have time built in every week or every month to like look at your savings, look at your, like, how do you guys see that as part of this kind of year-end checkup?
Yeah, I was going to say, thinking about the emotional piece too, I think it's important that we really think about how it feels. And I now reflecting on hearing you guys say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that too. Like that was what I did last month. I had to like sit with, oh my gosh, it's actually on last week's podcast. My like kind of despair of financial struggles I was having. And it wasn't until I did that, and I actually did a lot of journaling during that time to get those feelings and emotions out, that I could then look at the numbers and get real and find the savings and start reflecting on it. So I also wanted to say, like, journaling's a great way to do that reflection, because it's a bit more, we think we will just do it all up here, and maybe we will, but when we actually write it, it's so much more of a release. Than even just thinking it, right? And I think we have to feel the feels, because at least in my case, it's making me take action, right? And to your point of like calendaring in time, it actually, now I'm like on the other side and I'm like, it feels so good. I've saved this money, I've cut out these expenses, I've got a plan, my IRA is totally funded, things like that, right? And so I want to make, from this reflection, make that a goal to better to put in money time more often, more frequently again. I used to do that really well. Like I would say a year ago, I had like every Friday, I think it was. And then that's just like gone away as we get busy, right? But really, when we say we're busy, it's what we're prioritizing. And I hadn't been prioritizing, checking in on my money as much. And that's because it didn't feel good to me. I knew like I wasn't making as much as I wanted to be, right? And so that's really, I need to like cement that. So when it gets hard again, I'm like, okay, I'm in a routine. I actually calendar time to, check in on my money more frequently. Like it's weird because I'm the kind of person that I look at Monarch Money every single day. So I have kind of a tab on my money going in and out every single day. Yet I haven't been good about like working on my money until, really recently again. And so I would say for me, like calendaring in and just putting that repetitive event in my calendar, my Google Calendar is what I'm going to do. Again, Friday's maybe not the best day for that. I can reflect on that, but maybe it's a Wednesday morning or something like that. Right. So that's the way I'm going to try to do it, to actually like do something with my money, like check on my savings, check on my investment, credit card strategy, all these kinds of things, like be intentional of like keeping up on different areas across the year versus like freaking out in November and December.
If money was just about the numbers, it would be a lot easier. But it's not. We attach a lot of feelings, emotion, and patterns from childhood and behaviors with money, and then you combine it with being in a relationship. And most people don't handle finances in a similar way because they didn't have the same experience growing up. So it's complicated. And a lot of people get nervous just looking at their numbers. They don't know what to do with them. They're not sure of, what to analyze, and kind of give up and bail on it. But if you want financial success, if it's important for you to feel like you're in control of your money and that your money is working for you, and it's not a source of stress in your life, then definitely putting time into a routine and looking at your finances regularly is the way to get you there. And it doesn't have to be a ton of time. I think looking at it weekly or monthly is so helpful. And you kind of build up your knowledge over time. So at the beginning, it's confusing, but just starting to get some sort of clarity, the best place to start is understanding where your money goes, and then shift that to be a little more forward thinking. So start thinking about, what do you have coming up over the next few months or the next year that isn't a monthly expense. It's a weird one-time amount, because those are the amounts that throw our finances for a loop. That's what creates the most confusion. So just start shifting to thinking ahead, and putting the time in. I think the time is definitely the most important type of financial checkup, is to realize like this takes effort, this takes time to get better with.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that's perfect piece of this like year-end financial checkup. Have I been taking the time to look at my money? Have I been shying away from it? Have I been, do I have a concept of about how much money I spend on groceries, about how much money we're spending on, the fun stuff, dining out, whatever it is for your family? Because I think that's a great piece of this like checkup element, right? It's not a time to feel embarrassed. It's not a time for none of us are shaming anyone for anything, right? It's a time to just gather information, do this checkup, see how things are going, and then decide what needs to be focused on for the coming year. I think that is a really, really powerful way that you said that, to just see what you know, right? See what information you have and how you've been handling it and gather all of that info so that you can move forward. That's all we're suggesting that you do as part of this year-end kind of checkup on your finances.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for listening, and go do your money checkup. Put it in your calendar and go do it, and let us know how it goes. If you're feeling comfortable, we would love to hear. But either way, the most important thing is that you spend a little bit of time reflecting on your money before the new year. And be sure to like and follow our podcast. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Female Finance Collective. On Instagram, we're .collective. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. So send us your questions, your topic ideas, and we look forward to chatting again next week.